Good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you see this. This is Dee with Older INFP Insights. I've been putting this topic off long enough. I've tried to think what I'm going to say because it's kind of complicated. What the topic today is, what somebody asked me to talk about a long time ago, was what would I say to someone in their 20s? What I would say, what's going to be kind of simple up until this year happened, and particularly what's happened in the world in the past month. So things have changed, and what I would say would be it's very complicated and complex, as us INFP's minds tend to be. So I'll try to just keep it simple and direct and short. So I have two main things I would say. One is that what's going on in the world and in all facets is temporary. We've lived through this before. Those of us who are old enough, we've lived through all of it several times before. So we'll come out on the other end. Hang in there. The second thing I would say is I do not believe in cancel culture and opting out. I believe more in activism. So if you don't like what you see, the opting out is not an option for me, and I would not recommend it. Now, in a nutshell, that's what I believe, and that's what I would say to people in their 20s. I have a grandson who is in his 20s, and we've had this conversation, and he totally disagrees with me, and he's not going to be swayed, and I'm not either, but give him 50 years and we'll see how he thinks then. But yeah, so now I will explain this a little further because it's only a 2-minute video. Okay, we've been through all this before. Financially, we've been through dips, ups, downs, depressions, recessions, all of this. I remember in my 20s standing in a gas line. My job, I had just gotten married, it was the early 70s, and we could get where I live, we could get gas according to your license plate, the last number of your license plate. It'd either be like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or it would be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So my job, and I remember getting up at dark, because I wasn't working outside the home back then, because I couldn't get a job. That's another thing with my degree, I couldn't get a job. So my job was to stand and take the car, the extra car that we had was a $100 1960 Chevy, so you don't have to have a brand new car, by the way. I would get in line at dark to get gas on the day I could get gas. So we've been through that. People have to be self-sufficient. People have to be resilient. I have not lived through a depression. My parents lived through the Great Depression. So when I was growing up, we didn't have anything extra. We only lived on my father's income. We only had the basics. We had a lot of the basics, but we only had the basics. If there was something extra I wanted to do, like go to the movies, have a bicycle, anything like that, I had to pay for it myself. I had to figure out how to pay for it. So I've been kind of having side hustles and hustling, or whatever you want to call it, my entire life. And I know how to take care of myself because of that. I think the reason that I grew up this way, and my friends did not grow up this way, I think the reason I grew up this way was because my parents lived in the Great Depression, and they did not want to have to do without. A lot of people who lived through the Great Depression, once they got jobs and after the war was over and all that, they did the same thing. A lot of people did the same thing. They invested their money instead of taking nice trips and having nice things that you don't have to have. But we did live well. I mean, I came from an upper middle class family, professional family, but we just didn't have a lot of extras. our food was rationed even. My mother used to ration the food. We could only have 2 cookies and a half a soda after school per day. I mean, we had it rationed. So I know what that's like. I've lived through the Great Recession. I actually, do I tell you that I lost a vacation home during that, and I lost a business. I was working 2 jobs because I never have in my life, even with my educational background, I have never in my life had a livable wage. So I had 2 jobs, had my own company. My company went under. It was a pet sitting business, and that was not needed once people didn't have the extra money. They didn't travel, or they moved, or whatever happened. So that went under. So my vacation home that I was that went under. I lost that. So I've been through it. I've been through it. We're going to get by all this. The gas prices that are out there right now, I don't think are too high for what we're trading off. I'm not going to get political. I know it's controlled. I know how it works. It is political. But if it helps over in Europe, if it helps, then fine. I'm not going any more than I have to go. And I'll support local as much as I can, and I'll walk as much as I can. And I'm at the point now where I'm not working outside the home, so I don't have to go places. And I'm ordering things. I'm having everything. I've been having things delivered since COVID anyway, so I'm having things delivered. So as far as that goes, we've been through gas crises before. We'll get through it. Now, I'll say a little bit about housing. Housing is different right now, and it's affecting me on the other end as a boomer. And that is, right now I'm renting because I don't want the headache of a home. I had some property, some land, several acres of land that I sold. Somebody wanted to buy it because the land weren't for sale, so that anybody could afford. Right now, the land I sold last June that I made 50%, that I made almost 100% profit on, after owning it for 3 years, is now worth 3 times as much. In less than a year, it's now worth. I should have held out. Should have held out for about 6 months. It's now worth 3 times as much. So yeah, I understand the housing. You're thinking, well, I'm never going to own a house. I'm never going to do that. Housing is actually not a right, and I may rub people the wrong way by saying that. It is not a right. People in other countries do not own houses. I lived in Germany when I was in college one summer, and those that had money would buy part of a house. I guess it'd be kind of like something, they would buy a floor to a house. And very few had their own houses, and be kind of like the condo situation here. They couldn't afford it. The American dream was to have a house and 2 cars. We have kind of, I think, been spoiled, been very fortunate and been spoiled. I've been fortunate enough to own several houses. That's how I had my my retirement is based on real estate. I've invested in real estate, and it's paid off. Right now, I would say what you need to do, everything is too high, rents are too high. Where I live, my daughter moved back home, not home to me, but home in town not quite 2 years ago, and the house she bought is now worth almost twice as much as what she paid for it. And what she paid for it is beyond most people's means. So I understand there's almost no affordable housing. You may not be able to afford a house. Rents are sky high. I will say, as a renter, I can't afford to rent. I am in affordable senior housing. It's not public housing. It's just, they're just doing affordable housing more for seniors and families. But try to get into that if you can. I'm paying what I think my base rent is, what I think the going rate should be, but it's a third of what the going rate where I live is. I've looked to move. The only places I can afford to move would be like Mississippi. I can buy a house in Mississippi. I can buy a house in Wisconsin. Detroit, I probably could buy a house, but there are places that I really don't want to live. I don't think it'd be safe for me to live. I don't know anybody there anyway. So just keep trying to save. The housing bubble has got to pop. It always does. At some point, it levels off and it pops. It can't keep going higher and higher and higher forever. The bubble will pop. The bubble popped in 2008. I got caught up in all that when I had my vacation condo. I lost that. So yeah, everything goes in cycles. Just hang in there. I would suggest that you move out of your parents' home as soon as possible if you can, if you're there. I know we're INFPs and we like our alone time. Just buddy up with some people. Make friends or whatever if you don't have them, but buddy up with a couple of people and rent an apartment. As I said, my grandson, who is in his 20s, he's still in college. He has his own apartment. He's an INTP. He likes to be by himself, but he's found people to rent apartments with, and he has his own apartment. So you're going to have to share. Sharing is something that's done around the world. This is not an American thing to share, but we're going to have to get into the new age, the new world, the new whatever you want to call it, idea that Americans are going to have to learn to share. And you may not have a house as big as what your parents have. You may not have as much. I mean, my grandparents, nobody does. My grandparents had a 100-acre farm that was given to them as a wedding present by my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother's father, which would make my great-great-grandfather, had thousands of acres. So no, I've had a house, I've had several houses, but I haven't had a 100-acre farm. I haven't had 10,000 acres of farm. It does dwindle down. Not everybody is supposed to have more each generation, and it's not entitled. You go out and you work for it, you do the best you can. And as far as working for it, the other thing I will say to somebody, so just hang in there, everything runs in a cycle. Your time will come, and I kind of wish people wouldn't blame the boomers for everything, because one thing I will say, and I will get on my soapbox about, when they say, well, Social Security isn't going to be here for me, but the boomers are taking it all. We're not taking anything we haven't paid for. Let me get this straight right now. I'm starting to get my little anger thing up. Watch my video about INFPs and anger. We're not taking anything that we did not pay for. We paid into Social Security. We paid into Medicare. We're still paying for Medicare. We get charged Medicare even after we get retired. So it's not what it seems to be. The government has stolen from it, and I won't get into that, but the government to pay for wars and this, that, and the other. But if it runs out, it's not because the boomers are taking it all. The young people aren't putting money back in. So that's another thing to keep in mind. What I've told my grandson in his 20s, he won't work until he can get his 6-figure job. After he gets his PhD, he has one company he wants to work for and nothing else. And I said, well, go work. He's with the cancel culture, and I call it cancel culture. If you can't make a decent living, don't take the job, and then the people will go out of business. Let me tell you something. I agree we should be making probably $15 an hour. I have worked as a waitress for tips only. That's not easy to do. Wasn't supporting myself solely at that time, but I have done that work. I have had 3 jobs at the same time, trying to make it work, trying to put things together. No, it's not fair, but I'll tell you what. I've got a master's degree. I've got a professional degree. I have never, with that degree, and I got it later in life, with that degree, I have never had a livable wage because they pay you salary. Pay you salary, they can work you 60, 70 hours a week. I've never made more than $35,000 a year. And I've run companies, and I've run programs, and I've been the top person where the buck stops here. But because of my degree and because of where I was working in nonprofits, I've never made more than $35,000. That is not a livable wage, living on your own. But I owned a house. I was able to do things, and I'm in a lot of debt at that time too. And had second jobs and had to do what I had to do. No, it's not fair. However, that's what I say. I would rather for people, instead of being part of the cancel culture and opting out and say, I'm not going to participate. You're not going to put Bezos and Amazon out of business by you just quitting. They're too big. Companies are too big. The best education I've ever had, I will tell you, I took a job as a night manager at Burger King with a college degree and a teacher's certificate. Couldn't get a job teaching. Went to Burger King as a cashier. Worked my way up into night manager. I learned more about business. I was only there a year though. I learned more that year as a night manager at Burger King, making $100 a week, than I would have, I'm satisfied, than I would have in an MBA program at any university in the world. On the job training. So it can happen, and it does happen. You got to put in your work. You got to put in your time. It's not easy. But big corporations are not going to be affected if you stay home. You're going to hurt yourself, because when it comes time for you to be on the other end of life, like I am, and you want to retire, you're not going to have anything to retire with, and you are going to be up a you-know-what creek without a paddle. You know what I'm saying? You got to put the money into it. The better way, I think, is to advocate for change. Getting back to Bezos and getting back to Amazon. Bezos was going into space. While he was going into space, the guy, I can't remember his name, but the guy who was fired from Amazon in 2020 for trying to organize a union, what did he do while Bezos was in space? He organized a union. That's the thing to do. Go into these areas and then work for change. And you got to work for change within, not without. That's one thing I have learned. If there's going to be change, the change is going to come from within the organization. It's not going to come from protesting in the streets, not going to come from opting out, not going to come from blogging, not going to come from writing memes on Facebook or social media or whatever. It's not going to happen that way. You're only going to hurt yourself on the other end of life by not having anything to retire with. Okay? I could go on forever, and this is a lot longer than I thought. And I could go on with more topics. But just basically in your 20s, if you're still hanging in there with me, be in your 20s, hang in there. Roll your sleeves up, get to work, find a passion. And INFPs, we're mediators. We are wonderful at this. We are great organizers. Get into some kind of an organization that you like. Maybe not the work. I've not liked 99% of the jobs I've had, and I've had tons of jobs. But I want to make change. That's why I did program. I've developed programs. I've run companies. If none of that suits you, start your own business. I've run my own business. I've had 2 businesses in my lifetime. Completely different businesses. I've had a book publishing company where I made no money, but I did it because I loved it. And I published books. And I've had a pet sitting business, which I made quite a bit of money. And until 2008 came, made quite a bit of money. And I love that too. So if none of what I said makes sense to you, then start your own business. Good luck. You can do it. You've got the tools to do it. If you want to make a lot of money in a hurry, go to trade school. I tell you what, when your toilet overflows, here's a piece of advice I say to people. when your toilet overflows in the middle of the night, nobody's going to call a PhD from MIT. You understand what I'm saying? They're going to call a plumber. They make excellent money, and we're always going to need plumbers, electricians, linesmen, whatever. They make excellent, excellent money. Hard work, but hey, go to trade school. I'm all for trade school too. So that's just what I'm going to say. I hope this was meaningful for anybody. If it is, like, share, subscribe, comment below as I always do. If you have any ideas for other topics, put them in the comments section. I'll get to them when I can. And it's starting to have a thunderstorm here, so I'll go. Until next time, everybody, stay safe.